where we list and organize books, this is not really about organizing or sharing about what we read. This is only about storing your books and being able to access your books using any device, anytime. But the main problem with this is, unlike ebooks that you store locally, this is completely proprietary and hidden in a dedicated service. So usually, there's no way you can get these books out of these digital bookshelves stored in the cloud. So the question is, how do we connect all these different bookshelves together? It's quite interesting to see that we have highly dedicated and widely used services doing all these different features that we associate to books, but we cannot connect, at this point, all these bookshelves together. If you want to say to your friends that you're reading a book on your Kindle, there's no way you can do this automatically. You need to manually add the book. You need to enter the ISBN. You need to do all those kind of things that we're getting more and more used to do automatically. One answer to this problem could be an ecosystem called Bookserver. About a year and a half ago, several parties, including the Internet Archive, O'Reilly, Adobe, Feedbooks, 3Press, started working on an ecosystem for books. And what I mean by an ecosystem for books is, unlike services like the Kindle, where everything is controlled and vertical, an ecosystem means that any party can get involved, can distribute, access content. The technology used for this Bookserver ecosystem is actually called OPDS, which stands for Open Publishing Distribution System. Sorry for the complicated name. And the goal for this ecosystem and technology is actually to create a new architecture using common open standard that permits people to find, buy, acquire, read from any source, any devices, using any application. So it's the idea of really creating an ecosystem where we're not limited to one application, one search engine, one social network, and where books can actually travel much more easily. One thing that's part of this technology and specification is what we call an OPDS bookshelf. As you can see on the screen, an OPDS bookshelf, if you just use it in an app, in a dedicated reading app, is pretty much the same thing that you get on the Kindle or on the Nook or all these different services. It's a place where you will find books that you have previously acquired. So you can switch from one device to another and get your books again whenever you want. But there's one main difference between these kind of bookshelves and the bookshelf that you see in other ebook services. And the difference is that this is just an Atom feed. So some of you may not know what Atom is, but you probably know what RSS is. Atom is basically a syndication format that you probably use every day without even knowing about it. It's how, for example, blogs distribute their posts, and you can read them on things like Google Reader. And the fact that this is based on an Atom feed and that you have a new URI to access this means that even with a very basic Atom RSS reader, you can access this bookshelf. You don't need any specialized software to access this information. For example, this is an example in Google Reader. The exact same feed that was used to display in a dedicated app your bookshelf can be used in any feed reader. And you don't even need a web service to do this anymore because most browsers these days can support this. What does it mean when you start using Atom Feed? It means that not only can you use any service or software to access your bookshelf, It also means that you can aggregate several bookshelves together. You can share your bookshelf. Here I have my own bookshelf, but I could also add the bookshelf from a friend, for example. Which brings the idea of a global shelf. Today, if you decide to buy a book from another retailer than the one you're using most of the time, you're usually blocked into a single application. And each time you want to start reading a book again, you need to remember where your book was the last time you read it. It means that you get all kind of different reading experience. It means that there's no way you can find all your books at the same place. And it means that the whole user experience is messed up. The whole user experience is designed around using a single shelf that you cannot share and cannot access anywhere else. The good point about Atom is that we aggregate Atom every day. And if several retailers, for example, decided to use an OPDS bookshelf, they don't even need to distribute the books this way. If they only even used an OPDS bookshelf to distribute the metadata about the various books you have in their various bookshelves, it would be very easy to aggregate these together and create a global shelf. And when I mean a global shelf, I speak in very general terms. I'm not talking about just a global shelf of ebooks files. It could be a global shelf of metadata. It could be a global shelf around whatever you have stored in these bookshelves. A global shelf, yes, sure, but what for? First of all, a global shelf would enable people to back up their files. If for some reason, for example, 1984 or whatever books is removed from the service you decided to use to buy a book, with a global shelf and a URI where you can access your bookshelf, you would be able to store your file whenever you want. You could store them locally, you can store them using a cloud storage service like Dropbox. It's up to you. Another very interesting point is that we could use the global shelf to automatically add books to social network. So if you're using Goodreads, or if you have a blog or any other tool where you want to share information about what you're reading, instead of manually adding every book that you're downloading using one of these ebook services, we could automatically sync these services together and make the whole experience much better, actually, much smoother. And of course, it will also consolidate the user experience, multiple retailers, a single app. That's something that's currently not possible. At this time, on smartphones, on tablets, if you have multiple retailers, most of the time it also means multiple applications. Or if you want to use a single application, it means that you have to download books on your PC first, if it's authorized, and then move them back to your mobile device, which is not what people are looking for in their user experience these days. And as I mentioned, it's also a very easy way to share what you're reading. If it's just a feed, you could just send the URI to a friend using whatever service you want, and they could use their browser or anything they'd like to see what you're reading. Another good example would be bookshelf widgets. These highly dedicated social networks for books each use their own widget. We could very, very easily not only display these bookshelves in a basic RSS reader, we could create a tracking interface that you could add anywhere you want to display what you're reading and whether you like a book or not. This would be a much more distributed experience, and it will make these bookshelf widgets actually much more easier to create. You won't need to rely on one central service to have such a thing. Another use for these OPDS bookshelf would be to sync devices. The EXO from the OLPC project is it's a very good example of how you can use these digital bookshelf to sync devices together. The EXO project is aimed at students